Have you ever wondered what it's really like to be an elected leader of a city or a province or a country? If so, this is an episode you do not want to miss. Welcome back to a very special episode of C-Suite Unplugged, or rather, Premier Unplugged. We are grateful to be joined by Alberta's 19th Premier, the Honourable Danielle Smith, for an unplugged conversation where we get to learn a little bit more about her journey to the top job in Alberta, what motivates her leadership style, her love for public policy, and her dreams for the future of the province. And of course, we'll talk about the historic Supreme Court decision on Bill C-69 and what that means for Alberta. If you find this episode interesting or insightful, let us know by heading over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and give us a quick review and a rating. Now, on to the show.
Well, welcome back, folks. This time to a very special and unique Unplugged podcast, Premier Unplugged. I have the tremendous privilege of hosting Alberta's Premier, the Honourable Danielle Smith, on today's podcast. The Premier has been working hard for Alberta of late, particularly in the areas of electricity, Alberta's resource sector, protecting Alberta's most vulnerable, and ensuring that all Albertans can lead a good life. I've known her for many years. We were allies in business advocacy during her time at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, and I joined her radio show many times to discuss current affairs. She's an incredible policy mind, a thoughtful and articulate leader, and I'm grateful she's made time to join us today on the podcast. Before we begin, on behalf of the Council, Premier, thank you for serving Albertans in the role that you do. It's typically a thankless task, but we tip our hat to you for the dedication and service you give to Albertans each and every day. So, Premier, welcome.
Thanks, Adam. That was a very kind introduction. Looking forward to our conversation.
One of the fun things we do with these Unplugged podcasts is people love to hear the story behind the leader. And so you are Alberta's elected CEO and had a journey like no other. So perhaps tell us a bit of a path of Danielle finishing high school, the whole world in front of her, to the path of becoming Alberta's Premier.
Well, my initial path after finishing high school was to get an English degree. And then I went to Vancouver thinking that I might want to work in the movie business. I had a friend who was in movies, and so he got me a couple of jobs on a set as an extra, and I was bored to death. So I decided I needed to come back to school, get an economics degree. So I've got a joint degree, English and economics. And that set me on the path to being an intern at the Fraser Institute. Tom Flanagan was one of my professors. He recommended that I take the internship, as did a friend at the time from university, Ezra Levant. I'd met him in the political club's office. He was a Reform Party president. I was the Progressive Conservative Party president. And then from there, that really launched me into public policy. I got into property rights advocacy with the Canadian Property Rights Research Institute, tried my hand at elected office as a school board trustee. That didn't work out so well first time around. And then I got into media with the Calgary Herald, which gave me an opportunity to be on national television with Global Sunday. And I have had this career of cycling between business advocacy, media, and then politics. So got into politics again with the Wild Rose leadership. Again, that one didn't turn out particularly well for me either. And went back into radio. Was another turn in media. Talk radio was amazing, where I got to talk to people like you and brilliant minds in Alberta. And then my last turn was also business advocacy again with the Alberta Enterprise Group. And so I felt like all of these different pieces, being able to see things from a private sector perspective, have really intensive time doing research papers and understanding policy, as well as communicating with the public through the media and trying to find a way to translate all of that to a general interest listener. I think that really prepared me to get into the job that I have now.
Yeah, it's an incredible background you have, Premier, across the policy side, the media, politics. It's just a perfect combination for a deep and thoughtful approach to leading a province. And I would probably say, I'm not sure what shows you were on, but clearly the loss of the X-Files to not have you in a bigger role in Vancouver there. But Premier, you're a deep policy mind, a wonk like me. What drew you from the policy and advocacy side into politics? Was it the ability to actually have shaping and creating a policy, or is there any other aspect of the drew to politics?
Well, I love advocacy, and the difficulty with advocacy, and I think I've tried every part of it. I've tried direct advocacy, I've tried lobbying, I've tried writing in all the sorts of different mediums, whether it's a newspaper or magazine. I've tried radio, I've tried television, and it always felt like there were very few ways to move the policy dial. One of the things I found frustrating is I've been writing about health policy reform since my very first year as an intern at the Fraser Institute, because that was when I first saw their waiting your turn hospital waiting list survey. And then I got elected, and it's the same problems that were identified 25 years ago. And so that, I think, is the reason why I decided that I needed to get back into politics. I really felt like you can act and move on policy issues more directly in a way that is really difficult to do in any of those other advocacy roles. And I've been delighted to see that with strong leadership, a clear idea of what you want to do, great team, good messaging, you actually can move things pretty quickly. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Yeah, lots of opportunities ahead of us in Alberta. Premier, what's your leadership philosophy, and were there any experiences or people that helped shape it?
I would say that I had a poor leadership experience as my first manager job. I was getting myself through university as a waitress, and then got promoted to being a supervisor. And I remember being a little bit of a suck up to the boss. And so I'd be the person that, even though we were supposed to close at 9, if somebody came in at 9:01, I'd take that last customer. And I can tell you the staff was not very happy with me. So one of the things I learned through that, and then through my failure on the school board, because that board got dismantled after 10 months. I learned that you have to be able to work with people, find area of common interest. You can't constantly be in battle. I think I've honed that over the years. I think with my 6 years on radio, even more so, because I was talking to 30 to 35 people a week, including on top of that callers and texters. And when you get that diversity of opinion and you're trying to find a pathway where you can bring people together, it does really lend itself well to a leadership role, because when you get elected, you've got a team of people who all come from very different perspectives. And so trying to get consensus on a policy so that you can move forward on it, that takes a lot of relationship building, a lot of trust. So that's part of it. The other part is I actually trust people. If I know what I want accomplished, I can say, here's what I want to do. And I trust a person in a role. I leave it to them to figure out how to do it. And so that's the approach I've taken with all my ministers. If they all have mandate letters, I thought it was important to give those right at the beginning. And my approach to them is, don't let anything land on my desk, because if it lands on my desk, I'll be interested in it. And if you want to take care of it yourself, just take care of it yourself. But if you need my help, let me know, and I'll come in and I'll try to remove roadblocks. If you need cross-ministry support, I think that's my job as well, and I'm prepared to do that. But my job in this role right now, I think, is to keep people excited, keep them encouraged, and keep driving for change and for improving outcomes. And we're a year in, and it's going pretty well. I was a little bit worried about unity in our caucus, but I'm pleased to see that we've done some great team building, and I think there's a lot of trust building here, which makes me feel really proud.
Yeah, the cabinet seems aligned, united, rowing all in the same direction. Testament to your leadership, Premier. Absolutely. I know every day must be very different, but what does a typical day in the life of Alberta's Premier look like? And are there any things that you keep as key routines or practices that keep you grounded or consistent on a daily basis?
Well, I know what I would like my daily routine to be. It doesn't always succeed, but I get up around 6 a.m. I have a dog, so the dog always needs some attention in the morning. And then I have to go through and just monitor what's happening in the news, look at what the clippings are, see what's trending on X. And then at 9 o'clock is when I do my meeting with my core team, so I just go through my schedule for the day, identify any emerging issues, and then it's a series of meetings and speeches and outreach, podcasts, media, and then often ends with some kind of speaking engagement where I bring greetings on behalf of the province and am able to go to some really high value event. And then often home for dinner with my husband. I try to have Friday, Saturday, Sunday evenings as family time. And we have a standing date with some dear friends that we go over to their place for dinner and just debrief on the week. But I'm not a late night person. I think maybe it's because I had so many years on radio where I had to be up at 4:30 in the morning. Now I get to sleep until 6, which is great, but it means that I have to be in bed pretty much by 10. So I'm not the life of the party that way.
Well, I applaud all of the places I see you at and bringing remarks on behalf of Albertans to different conferences and sessions, etc. So you are doing a remarkable job of being in as many places as you can. So it's tremendous.
Thank you.
Premier, if someone were to come to you and say, what advice do you have for me as a young professional or to someone finishing school, based on your path, what would you encourage them to do or even not do?
You know, the thing that was probably the most instrumental for me, and it took a while to get there because I wasn't the most outspoken person. I was a bit of a bookish kid and liked to write essays, but I was just so inspired by watching Speaker's Corner and the robust exchange of ideas from people like Ezra Levant and Naheed Nenshi and Rob Anders. And others were all contemporaries on campus. Mm-hmm. And I always felt like I've got to learn how to do that. And it's not easy if you didn't get into speech and debate in high school. So I always took positions where I had to do public speaking. I took public speaking courses with Dale Carnegie and Toastmasters. And one of the things that I learned very early, and maybe this came out of my Fraser Institute experience, is that they used to have these student leader colloquia where you'd go to a seminar and then they'd have a discussion group afterwards about the things that you learned. And I learned that if I spoke up, I got invited back to the next one and the next one. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I try to tell young people, is that if you want to be seen, you have to be heard. And if you want to be heard, you have to speak up. That don't let it be somebody else who takes your great idea and brings it forward in a meeting. Let it be your idea. Because when you speak up with confidence, it just creates that networking and those connections that you wouldn't have otherwise. And I think that that's the most important thing. I think young women in particular tend to perhaps be a little more reticent to speak up, but it's if you want to have a successful, vibrant career, you have to be noticed. And the best way to be noticed is to learn how to speak well.
Yeah, that incredibly sound advice. I couldn't agree more. Final question on getting to know you, Premier. Is there something that people would be surprised to know about you? Do you have some sort of double jointed elbow or interesting party trick or something like that you can dust off from time to time, or ride a big Harley Davidson or something like that?
Gosh, I wish I could. No, I don't really have any secret talents. I do love trains, and that may be an unusual thing, but my very first train experience was when I was a young kid. And my parents took us to Lloydminster. That was when I think Via Rail still went to Lloydminster. And then when I graduated from high school, I took the train through Europe. And so it's been kind of taking the Canadian across the country twice. So, and every time I go to a new location, I try to take the train in from the airport. So I definitely love trains.
Yeah, well, my colleague Brittany is also a train aficionado. So. And we would love nothing more than a train from the Calgary airport to downtown. I will just plant that seed for sure.
I can tell you we've got a lot of projects that we're looking at, because I think everybody is now syncing up around the same idea, whether it's from the Calgary airport to downtown, or with the extension of the Blue Line, or whether it's the Calgary airport to downtown onto Banff, or whether it's from Calgary downtown through the airport on your way to Edmonton Airport and Edmonton downtown. There are a multitude of projects on the go, but I think everybody is really thinking about how do we make this happen, and I hope we can.
Yeah, I think there's tremendous projects, the airports, the Banffs, the Calgary, Edmonton, lots of opportunities there. Let's jump into some policy topics, Premier. Today's a landmark day. We're recording this Friday, the 13th, auspiciously October 13th. Supreme Court of Canada today ruled in favor of the government of Alberta's challenge to the constitutionality of Bill C-69. Our business council was proud to stand alongside the province as an intervener, and congratulations to you and your government colleagues for a persuasive argument and a successful decision. So what does this mean for Alberta and for Canada?
Oh, congratulations to all of us. I mean, I know that it was my predecessor, Jason Kenney, who took the lead on the legal challenge. Other provinces came on board. Business groups like yours came on board, First Nations. And I think we made a really solid argument, obviously. But what an absolute shame that we had 6 years of fighting with the federal government to be able to get our rights back and to be able to get the Supreme Court to render that final decision. And I'm glad they did. They confirmed that the Constitution matters, that our founders and drafters of our foundational documents, they meant it when they said that provinces should be responsible for developing their resources and the provinces should be responsible for electricity development. So the federal government had a clear loss. They've been acting illegally for 6 years. And what I'm concerned about is how much damage that they have done to the investment climate, how much investment got chased away, how many projects that would have happened that didn't happen, how many jobs got lost that shouldn't have been lost. Someone was asking me for instance, what do I think got canceled as a result of this? It's hard to know what didn't go ahead. What I do know is our electricity grid, which is 12,000 megawatts, mostly reliant on natural gas. We're trying to build new baseload, and nobody wants to build natural gas baseload power. That is 100% because the federal government has created such uncertainty around the investment climate, and it's creating problems. We've had 8 near failures of our electrical grid in the last year. So these are these kinds of decisions, while they may get academic in the court, they have serious consequences on people. If you end up losing electricity with reliability, people can die in the heat of summer or the cold of winter, and it has major impact on affordability. So we feel now like we have the ability to take more charge in ensuring that some of these projects go ahead. I declared Alberta open for business, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of that.
Yeah, zeroing in on the electricity regulations, Premier, something we are aligned with you on in terms of just the infeasibility of a one-size-fits-all program for the country. Every jurisdiction is starting from a different distance to the finish line, and we can't expect everybody to get there in the same ways. And every province has different solution sets, and so we will be submitting to the federal government our concerns that as long as we're aiming for net zero by 2050, that should be considered success. And so how do you feel that the negotiations, the campaigns are going in regards to amending the clean electricity regulations?
Well, certainly a whole lot better after today, because I think we've really made the point. Anything that the court said about natural resource development, it holds true for electricity as well. It's in the same section of the Act, and there's a reason for that, because our natural endowment happens to be coal and natural gas. We phased off of coal and dramatically reduced emissions, but the problem is that carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology is not perfect yet. It can collect about 65% of the emissions, but the federal government is trying to push technology and push an agenda to get there faster than technology and time will allow. So I think that the 2050 target is achievable, and achievable maybe in a different way than the feds would expect. I think what you'll see in Alberta is the first step will be the best available technology for carbon capture. And then the second step will be, how do we bring on more low or zero emitting fuels? Geothermal is a good potential for base load, as will small modular nuclear and even perhaps nuclear as we start developing the social license around that. We'll take the pause off wind and solar in the next few months so that there's a little more clarity about the places that wind and solar should go. I'd love to see more solar on rooftops of buildings and on homes so that we're able to leverage the existing infrastructure that we have. I think that's going to be an important part of the solution as well. But there is going to be this question about the last mile, that last 20%. And that's why I'm very excited about the work that Avatar Innovations are doing to see if there's a direct air capture. I was just taken aside by somebody who informed me that Carbon Engineering, which is another direct air capture innovator, was just purchased for $1.2 billion, I believe, by Occidental. And it's going to be rolling out another part of the solution here. So I'm excited about all of that innovation, and hydrogen as well is going to play an important role. It just takes time to do this kind of innovation, but I believe in our entrepreneurs. If we give them enough time, we give them enough support, we give them enough encouragement, create the investment climate, we're going to get there, but we have to do it in a reasonable way.
Yeah, that's pragmatic and reasonable for different parts of the country. Absolutely. Premier, in a few weeks, the legislature will sit again. What are some of your priorities for this session?
The priorities we identified as a caucus when I had my very first caucus retreat are pretty much the priorities we have today. One is standing up to Ottawa. So we're going to continue to assert, now with this weight of the Supreme Court decision behind us, that they have to work with us on areas of joint jurisdiction. And they've got to give us the latitude to be able to manage our own affairs. We'll also have much more to say about healthcare. I've been encouraged with the reforms that we've made so far. I would say that Alberta Health Services, when it focuses on acute care, it can really do some great work. We had it stress tested multiple times this year with the first respiratory virus season that I had to live through. We've got another respiratory virus season that is coming up. We have, and I'm told that we have the ability to manage surge capacity. We had tested over the fires, the fact that we had to move different patients around because the hospitals kept closing, and we had to accommodate folks from Northwest Territories. They managed to do that without any hiccups. And then, of course, the recent tragedy of the infection with E. coli. Another, over 350 young people who had to be seen in hospital, and they managed that brilliantly. So having seen those early successes, I'm very confident that we can get focused on delivering the best acute care. We've got a lot more work to do on primary care, a lot more work to do on continuing care, a lot more work to do in mental health and addiction. But I think if we get the accountabilities right and the structure right, I think that we're going to see amazing service. And that's what I think we should all be focused on. So that's the other one. Obviously, energy, environment. I'll be going to COP28 in a month's time, so that we can get our proactive, positive message out. And we still have work to do on public safety. I think that our frontline police officers need support. They need to know that we value them, so that we can attract more people into that profession. Because downtown Calgary and Edmonton and some of our mid-sized cities are dangerous places, and we've got to make sure that those places are safe for the general public. So those will be another area that we focus on.
Yeah, a strong set of priorities there, Premier, and great to hear that you're going to COP. That we need your voice in those conversations. So thank you for going. That's wonderful. One of the remarkable things about Alberta has been its growth and population over the past 12 months. Also, basically 2 red deers of growth in the last 12 months. Tremendous amount of pressure that puts on everything from our roads, our transit, our hospitals, schools, etc. How do you see managing that growth? Alberta still continues to be a magnet in terms of quality of life and affordability compared to other parts of the country, and a really desirable place to live from an international perspective. How are you and your colleagues planning to manage the rapid growth we've seen and likely still to continue?
One of the ways we addressed the affordability crisis was to make sure that we took the fuel tax off of all of the gasoline and diesel. And that has helped to moderate our inflation rate, which I think is really important, because affordability on that front is one of the pressures that families face. The other pressure, of course, is attainable housing. And that I've been watching to see what other jurisdictions are doing, to see how we might be able to bring some good policy here so that we can accelerate the approval of subdivisions and the approval of new housing. So one thing that that we're going to be exploring is how we might be able to match some of the requests that Calgary has made, that they want to be able to offer land up on a long-term lease so that can reduce the cost of new housing build. They want to be able to have, for new rental housing, for instance, a reprieve for a period of time on property taxes, so that also reduces the cost. So I'm very open to talking to them about that. The other thing I've put the challenge to our municipalities is we need to have a streamlined permitting and approval process. Mm-hmm. St. Albert stands out as one that is quite open about how they can do a same-day business license, 3-day development permit, and 3-week building permit. And I keep on saying every single municipality should strive for that, because then you're going to be able to unleash the private sector and being able to build a lot of those properties out. We may add a little bit of a sweetener to that. I've recently met with a councillor who told me that if we could do 2 transportation projects in his ward, that would be able to open up 20,000 additional spaces for homes. And those are very attractive type of projects for us. Is if we can make a little bit of an investment into transportation to be able to open up those communities, I'm very, very open to having those conversations. I'm going to challenge Red Deer. I think Red Deer, because it's centrally located between two major cities of over 1.5 million people in the metro area, why shouldn't Red Deer grow to being another 1.5 million city? Why shouldn't we have that in central Alberta and have that whole corridor, which is already an economic corridor, have a greater amount of people living in that central zone? So that's going to be another one. But those are the kind of things that we're talking about. That being said, I talked about transportation projects being one way that we can help incentivize that growth. But we also know that as communities grow, they're going to need more schools, they're going to need more health centers. And we've created a structure with our budget framework that at the end of each year, when we have a surplus, half of it has to go into debt repayment, but the other half can go to debt repayment savings or one-time projects that don't increase operating expenses. And so I think that's what you'll see is we will wait until we've realized the surpluses at the end of the year, and we'll be looking for shovel-ready projects so that we're able to manage those growth pressures in those communities that are facing the huge influx.
Big fans of the fiscal rules we put in place, Premier, very much shaped by some of the ideas that we are aligned with as well. Final question as we wrap here, Premier. I know you're so busy. We got to get you to your next appointment, but what does Alberta look like in 10 years? It's beyond a political cycle, beyond a political mandate, and against that backdrop, what do you hope is your legacy?
One of the things I kind of like to look out to 2050, because that seems to be the target where everybody looks out. But our vision for 2050, of course, is that we're still going to have a robust, well-diversified economy. I hope that we double in population. I hope that we continue to be the destination where people come to realize their dreams, their entrepreneurship, their ability to raise a family and have a wonderful life here. And all of the things that are associated with that, making sure that we've got functioning and high performance government, great hospitals, great education, great post-secondary, lots of opportunity for people to engage in the trades. We're going to build that out as well. But I think I'd also like to be on a track where we can be debt-free again. When I got involved in politics, it was when Ralph Klein was there and he set that vision out. So that's part of the reason why we're committed to year after year with our surpluses paying down debt so we can ultimately be debt-free. But we've also started increasing our investment in our Heritage Savings Trust Fund. We put $2 billion last year in it, as well as we're increasing the investment income that's staying in the fund. I'd love for that to grow to $100 billion so that we're able to ultimately wean ourselves off the reliance on resource revenue. So I think we've put some of the big pieces in place, and I'm just delighted. I feel like we had a lot of years of hardship in our province where we just couldn't get a break on any front for a good 8 years, it looked like. And now things have really turned around. Our Alberta is Calling campaign is so successful. People want to be here. They're excited to be here. And I think that because we believe so much in the private sector, entrepreneurship, and it just individual creativity and grit, I think we're really just going to accelerate all of the amazing things that we already have about this place. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, it is the best place in the world, in my opinion. And Premier, thank you so much for your leadership, for helping us on the right path, and the leadership you're setting for the trajectory of this province. We're behind you. We're with you, and you can call on us at any time to help advance what's best interest for Albertans and Canadians. So thank you for joining us, and really a real privilege to share some time with you today.
My pleasure, and I will take you up on that kind offer. Look forward to seeing you again.
Well, thank you for joining us for Premier Unplugged, a very special episode of C-Suite Unplugged. This podcast is a production of the Business Council of Alberta. You can learn more about us at businesscouncilab.com, and we'd love to connect with you on social media. So give us a follow at BizCouncilAB on Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. If you liked this episode and want to support our message of shared prosperity for all, please be sure to head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts to subscribe, rate the show, and give us a quick review. New episodes drop every other Tuesday. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.